came in a wheelchair, very, very bitter. One of her boys had been stabbed to death. Another one of her sons was knocked over in a hit and run and died. And her other son was in prison. So she came into Oasis really, really angry. And it was many months of just listening to her. And I remember her saying, "I forgive the men that killed my boys." Then we saw the bitterness leave her over a period of days, weeks. And I remember when she just got out of her wheelchair and she was like, "I don't think I need this wheelchair anymore."
Welcome, everybody. This is Simon Gilbo with Inspired. Inspired is all about telling great stories of overcoming faith. You know, we're bombarded with so much bad news and there's so much grim stuff going on in the world. So the aim is that after our time together, you'll leave feeling refreshed, feeling stirred in your faith, knowing that God is at work. He's transforming lives around the world. And I love the range of people we've had on. This week, we've got Victoria Armstrong with us. Welcome, Victoria.
Hi, lovely to be here.
Yeah, fantastic to have you. Victoria is the founder of the Oasis Centre in Gorton near Manchester. Our paths crossed in Manchester through the Message a few years ago. I don't know her well, but I'm really looking forward to hearing. I've been on your website. I've listened to loads of these beautiful transformational stories of people that have had such a rough start in life. And I'm sure we're going to hear some of those over the next 45 minutes together. So listen, Victoria, let's just kick off with your background, your family, how you came to faith. Go for it.
Yeah, so I was brought up in a very loving home, but I wasn't a Christian. I always believed that there was a God. That never entered my head that there wasn't a God, mainly because of trees. I used to look at trees growing up and just think they are amazing. Like there has to be a creator behind that tree. But didn't think that I needed to do anything more than believe that there was a God. And then I left home to go to university. So my mum and dad were living in Hong Kong at the time. My dad was in the RAF, so I'd lived there for about 5 years and came back to England to study at Manchester because my sister was already studying in Manchester. So I was looking for really cheap accommodation because I wanted to still enjoy Chanel. I was that shallow that I like Chanel perfume and makeup. So I wanted to find really cheap accommodation so that I could continue enjoying the luxuries in life.
Right.
And I found a place called Gorton, and it was so much cheaper than anywhere else. And other people that I was getting to know, they were moving to more affluent areas like Chorlton and Didsbury. And I'm like, I'm the one that's hit the jackpot here. And until I moved to Gorton and realised why it was so cheap.
Right.
And this is the first time I was introduced to just the word deprivation and, people living in isolation and poverty, really. But my salvation story is I was engaged at the time to a Japanese guy who was doing his studies in Australia. We'd met in Hong Kong. And then he quit his degree and then moved to England to be with me, young love. And he really struggled with life. And I was also really struggling on my degree. I'm not very academic and I was feeling pretty overwhelmed. My degree was going really badly, really missing my family. And the guy that I was engaged to was quite abusive.
Right.
So one night so he was in the living room playing on his guitar and I'm in my bedroom feeling really, really low. And just thinking, how can I be in this position where I'm looking out the window, wondering if I jumped, would I just break my leg or would it kill me? I couldn't believe that I was having that kind of thought pattern. And that scared me a little bit. So I remembered when I was growing up at school, there was just a little like a prayer poem that used to be chanted. And I just kind of like clung on to that, like that little prayer. And I started saying it quite frantically in my head to stop these awful thoughts of jumping out the window. And then I heard an audible voice right in front of my face. And it said, "If you don't find me now, you never will."
Wow.
and I knew it was God. And I wasn't scared. I mean, now looking back, I look at those words, if you don't find me now, you never will. That would freak me out now. That would really
Yeah.
kind of like send me on a downer. But I felt the clarity of what was being said to me. And because I could hear this voice in front of me, I just spoke back very spontaneously and just said, I'm doing really badly on my degree, Lord. I'm in a really bad relationship. I'm feeling really messed up at the moment. I haven't got the capacity to find you. Can you find me?
Right.
And then I just went to sleep. And I woke up the next morning, completely forgotten that I'd had this outrageous conversation with this God, and went to the first bus stop outside my flat to get to my first lecture. And as I was waiting for the bus, this lady comes up to me and she said, hi, my name is whatever. Would you like to come to my church on Sunday? And I just looked at her and said, oh, no, you're all right. And then the bus came and I got on the bus, went to the top of the bus and got to the back seats and sat there. And another lady came walking towards me, sat right next to me, really plonked herself down right next to me, turned to me and said, you need to come to my church on Sunday.
Wow.
And I went, actually, I'm not really into church. I kind of see them as a bunch of hypocrites, so not interested. So get off my bus, get into my first lecture, and two people were in front of me. And they were just talking about the CU. And so I just said to them, what's the CU? Because they were talking with a bit of passion. And they said, oh, it's the Christian Union. And at that moment, I thought, flipping out, in half an hour, 3 situations have happened that church and God has been mentioned. So I just said to them, I believe in God. I believe that there's a God. I'd love to come along to this CU. So they obviously got really excited and told me, actually, it's tonight. Yeah, come along. Here's where it is. And I was like, oh, no, I'll be there. Go home. By the time I get home, I've completely forgotten about that conversation and didn't go. And then 3 months later, it occurred to me, I still hadn't gone. There was a few times where I did start to leave to go, and then something would happen. One time I got broken into as I was coming home to then go to the CU. And so obviously I didn't go. And there was just loads of things that happened, not as crazy as breaking into, but just stuff that stopped me from going. And then, I went and sat in this hall with lots of young people. That was really surprising. And the first time I went, I just felt angry. Like, I cannot believe these people believe in this book and everything's about this book. And I just thought that this is crazy. And went home, went back the following Tuesday night. This time, I'm really emotional. So I started to cry. And I think I was crying so loudly that this lovely lady came up to me, put her arm around my shoulder and said, let's go into another room. And so there, and I'm like saying to her, what is happening to me? And she said, it's okay. It's the Holy Spirit. And I'm like, what's the Holy Spirit? Anyway, go home. The next week I go back and there is a guy at the front and he's a missionary and he spent most of his time in China and Hong Kong. So I'm like, oh, Hong Kong, wow. And I was already a Hong Kong bore. So I chatted a lot about, so I'm really listening. But all I can hear this man saying is Jesus. And every time he said Jesus, I'm reminded in a way, my memory was so clear. I'm sitting cross-legged in primary school. It's Christmas time and we're singing carols. And God reminded me of the time where I'm sitting cross-legged. And as we were singing this carol, I felt so happy and so warm and so relaxed. And And I felt God say, I was talking to you then, Victoria.
Mm-hmm.
And then another time, I'm now in secondary school and it's Easter, and I'm pelting out some Easter songs, and feeling really confident in the words that I was saying,
Mm-hmm.
and feeling stirred by the words I was saying, but didn't know, and then, and just loads and loads of memories of times where God was stirring my heart, but I hadn't realized at the time.
Yeah.
And then it was like, oh my gosh, it's all about Jesus. Like, that's the whole point of life, and
Mm-hmm.
now I'm 19 years old, and I'd been here, hearing people kind of like talking about going away and finding themselves, on kibbutz, and what is it all about? And, and I'd kind of like, yeah. And then all of a sudden, oh my gosh, have I got the revelation of what it's all about? Like, it's
Mm-hmm.
about Jesus. And anyway, so I go up to the guy at the end who'd been speaking at the front, and I just said, where do I sign? What do I do to become a Christian? And he said, oh, no, you don't have to sign any papers, and then he just started talking to me about salvation, but now by this point, loads of students were kind of like around me and getting all excited, and that was starting to freak me out, so I couldn't
Okay.
really hear what he was talking about. But I mean, they were lovely. It was I was just freaked out. Anyway, he said, would you like to give your heart to Jesus now? And I said, no, you're all right. I'll do that on my own. So as I left, I was walking towards the bus stop thinking, oh, I've got some nice joss sticks at home and some lovely candles. I think I'll have a bit of a, an experience, and, get a bit hippie. And anyway, so I get to the bus stop, and I just knew I've got to do this now. And so I put my bag down, and all I said was, Lord, can I come into your heart? That's all I said, but I knew God knew what I was trying to say.
All right.
And at that moment, everything went white. And it was like for a split second, but it felt like it lasted. I was fully aware of that moment as though it had lasted quite a long time, but I knew it was a split second. It was like above me, beneath me, beside me, around me. It was just this outrageous, strong white. It's the only way I can describe it. It was just really, really this incredible place. And I thought, oh my gosh, I think I'm in the heart of God. I think I'm in his heart. And then it felt so holy, even though I'd never even heard the word holy. I knew it was holy. Anyway, split second, I'm back at the bus stop. The bus pulls up, and I just felt God say to me, not audibly, but just in my heart, I just felt God say, you need to tell someone that your life has been transformed by me, so that I can, declare that you're my child, kind of thing. I mean, I can't exactly remember the words, but I knew I had to tell somebody. So I get on the bus, and I look at all these people in front of me, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, am I going to have to tell all these people that I found Jesus? Anyway, I didn't. And I sat on the bus, and then I knew, oh Lord, you want me to tell my boyfriend. You want me, the minute I get in, you want me to tell him that I've found you, knowing that would change everything. And so I did, and he was absolutely furious with me. And I remember him saying to me, I knew you'd do this. And I was like, well, I didn't, And then that night I was sitting in my bedroom saying, oh my gosh, Lord, I am yours. I am yours for the rest of my life, but I'm not going to church. Because all I'd ever understood of church was it was quite boring, outrageous hypocrisy, and just no desire to go. Anyway, so then I heard God say, not audibly, but in my head, read the book of James. And I'm like, oh, wow, why would that? So at this point, I'm thinking the Bible is called Genesis. So that's just what I thought the Bible was. Didn't enter my head that there was books in the Bible. And when I was at school, I was given a Gideon's Bible when I started secondary school. And I'd always kept this book. And so when I came back to England, I brought it with me, and it was in my room. So I grabbed it, and Genesis, Exodus, yeah, I've heard of that. Going through and thinking, there's not going to be a book of James. Actually, am I going mad?
Mm.
And then, it took quite a while to get to the book of James, and then it was there, and I'm like, what?
Yeah.
And brilliantly so, it was a really short book, and I've never overly been into reading. So straight away, that delighted my heart. But then I started reading this book, and it's so practical.
Yeah.
And at this point, I'm not aware of the Holy Spirit, but my body was like it was on fire. And as I'm reading, I am crying, and then I'm laughing, and then I'm looking around thinking, if anyone sees me, they're going to think. And God was just showing me the importance of my daily life with him, and just helping me understand honesty and integrity and truth. And it's amazing. But yeah, that's how my journey started with Jesus.
Fantastic story. And funny enough, I've just preached through the book of James, and you're right. I mean, it is pure practical outworking, isn't it? Okay, so you've come to faith. So presumably, Japanese fiance, that quickly comes to an end. Is that right?
Yeah, well, it took about 6 months. It didn't happen as quick as it should. It was through going to church that some of the guys I was getting to know were like saying, I don't think this is where God wants you, living in that house with this guy. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll ask God. And so I got on my knees one night, and I just said, Lord, am I meant to be with this guy? And all I knew was, by the end of the week, it's over. That's all I knew. Funnily enough, I then went to see my now husband of nearly 30 years. I went to see him on the market. He was working on the markets. He was a really good friend of mine who'd watched me become a Christian and thought, what on earth has happened to Vic? I used to go around to my sister's house. He was friends with my sister, and they used to literally shut the curtains when they could see me walking down the street and say, pretend we're not here. Because literally I'd go in there and just start preaching the gospel. I did a lot of damage when I first became a Christian, because I was so, oh my gosh, there is a God, and he's he's real, and he's got purpose for our lives, and all that. How all those guys found Jesus, and it was in a remarkable time. But I went to see Andy on the markets, and just said to him, yeah, I just prayed that am I meant to be with this guy? And God's just said, it's going to be over. What was remarkable was when I'd finished with my fiance, and at this point, Andy's not a Christian, and I'm falling in love with Andy, and thinking, what on earth, Lord? This is crazy. This can't be happening. So I was walking in a park, and I bent down and said, Lord, I'm not going to look, but if I pick up a 4-leaf clover, then I'm meant to be with Andy. I mean, what a crazy thing to say, but this is the beginning of my journey with God. I didn't understand he doesn't usually roll with 4-leaf clovers. So I bent down, didn't look, and I know I could have picked up a crisp packet, but I just grabbed something, and it was a 4-leaf clover.
Wow.
And I look back on that, and I just think the kindness of God. He knew where I was at. He knew my motives and my heart, that I only wanted to follow him. And I needed to know, as I was falling in love with this guy, am I meant to be with him? Anyway, when I then saw Andy, I said, hey, and told him, and he's like, oh my gosh. So anyway, he comes to church on Sunday, wanting to get to know a little bit more. Second time he comes to church, amazing gospel message by our amazing pastor. And he just starts shaking, Andy, and goes to the front and says, I need Jesus. And he literally shook for 12 hours straight. And it was really scary. I found that a very, very intense experience. But Andy just kept looking at me going, Vic, I'm fine. I just feel like God is mopping out my insides of all the stuff I've done. He is mopping me out. He said, it's okay, everything's fine. Yeah. And from that moment, he was just transformed.
Beautiful. And you talked about it, it's a very cheap area because of its roughness. Did I read that someone chucked a brick through your window? You had some bad experiences?
Oh, yeah. So going back then, for when I first moved to Gorton, and so at this point, I haven't heard God. And so I'm in my flat, and I'm just brushing my teeth one night. And some kids just go past, and they just for a laugh, just throw a brick through my window as I'm brushing my teeth. They could see me there, and threw it through the window, and it just landed in the sink. And I'm like, what? And where I was living, there was drug deals outside my house. So there still is. I only live around the corner from where I first lived. And, there was prostitution outside my flat. And I remember one night there was a boyfriend and girlfriend just arguing outside, and I just saw him just pick up a piece of wood and just smack her across the face. And I'm like, what is this place? Like, what is going on here? Spent a lot of time like just ringing, just trying to find ways of supporting people, but I wanted to get out. So I was like, okay, forget Chanel makeup. Nothing's worth this. So I was getting ready to leave Gorton, and that's when I had my experience with Jesus, and that's when God started to reveal to me how much he loved this community. So by this point, I am married, and I'm with a 3-month-old, my first daughter, Abigail. And by this point, Andy is preaching at different churches. And we'd had the first 12, 18 months of our Christian walk was incredible, outrageous. We were just seeing God move in such powerful ways. And then all of a sudden, I'm at home with a 3-month-old staying in because Andy's going out preaching at a church or whatever. And I'm feeling really sorry for myself. So I'm like saying to God, oh, is this it? No disrespect to my amazing girls, but so is this it? So I'm now just going to be staying at home. And Lord, I told you I've given you my life, and I'm committed, and I recognize sacrifice. I understand. I'm excited to serve you. And then I just felt God say, just get a paper and pen. I'm gonna tell you some things. So I just started drawing this picture of a building, but it was like a heart, and it was like pumping out God's unconditional love 24/7. And every time this building kind of like pumped like a heart, his unconditional love was just pumping into streets around Gorton, roads, cul-de-sacs. I was seeing people that were living packed out in 2 up, 2 downs. His love was just pouring into their houses. And I was seeing someone who was living on their own, just really isolated, just pouring into their house. And God was showing me, he was hearing the cry of this community. And he was saying to me, there are people here in this community that will never step into a church because they abuse, and they know that they are addicted to abuse on every scale, not just the obvious abuse that you think of, but there are so many ways of abusing another human being. And God was like saying to me, they'll never go into a church because they know I know what they're doing, and they're trapped. And then God was showing me people that were being abused, and not just in the obvious ways of being abused, but in every foreseeable kind of way, the layers of abuse, these victims of abuse. And God said, they'll never come into church because they're like, well, if there is a God, why on earth would I believe in him or serve him? Because look at my life. Like, if there's a God, how is he allowing this to happen in my life? And the emotion that I felt. So when God was showing me these images, I felt their emotion, their anger, their humiliation, their hatred, their disappointment, their longing. And also I was aware of God's heart, and I feel it as clear as I did 30 years ago. And his heart was so pure and so kind and so gentle and so loving and so eternal. And he just showed me that he wanted me to be part of his great love story in the smallest of ways. And I think that's the first time that I realized there's a great love story happening on planet Earth through the ages. And it's more real and it's more powerful and it's more adventurous than anything that we are aware of in our lives when we watch a Hollywood movie. It's all dull and meaningless compared to his great love story.
Yeah.
And I was realizing that he was inviting me into that. So I'm getting really excited. Like, I'm drawing this picture. I'm kind of like understanding, oh my goodness, Lord, you have something remarkable that you're wanting to bring to this community, and you want me to be part of it. Anyway, I'm thinking, I'm only a couple of years into my walk with Jesus. I'm thinking this is going to happen tomorrow. So I go to church the next Sunday and I'm telling everybody, and I'm showing them, in detail what I saw. But it was 5 years later before Oasis started, and it wasn't even called Oasis for years. It was 2001, and it was when asylum seekers and refugees started coming to Manchester in big numbers, and they were being placed into accommodation that even our most vulnerable in our communities wouldn't live in. And what God was showing me in those 5 years of waiting, he was building my character. So he gave me this outrageous call on my life, but my goodness, I wasn't mature enough to even begin to walk it out. So there was some learning to do through parenting, through bringing up my two girls, Abigail and Emily. And actually, Oasis started the day that my youngest daughter went to nursery, because then I was free to open the church and start. And it was literally 2 asylum seekers came into our church one February 2021. And one guy, he was from Angola, and he'd fled a horrific genocide. And he came in and his nose was bleeding, and he was a little bit confused, and he was saying, I think it's because I'm so cold. He was in shorts and t-shirts, and he'd never experienced the temperatures that we have here. And I just heard God say to me in my heart, it's time.
Right.
And then the following Wednesday, I opened up the church. They came in, we were able to give them warm clothes, warm food. And that's how it started.
Brilliant.
Hey folks, I hope you're enjoying the podcast. I'm loving the response we're getting from across the world. It's just wonderful to see how encouraging and inspiring it is being and hitting the spot. Listen, if you are being blessed by it, I'd love it. Basically, this happens under the auspices of our ministry, Great Lakes Outreach, which works in the poorest and the hungriest country in the world, which is Burundi. We're having an incredible impact in the toughest of circumstances. We want to carry on supporting those local folks doing a great job. So if you wanted to, greatlakesoutreach.org/inspired. You could make a donation there. I'd so appreciate it. Also, it's word of mouth, isn't it? So gossip these podcasts to other people, get them to subscribe, give us a great review. Absolutely wonderful. So grateful to you. So that's greatlakesoutreach.org/inspired. If you want to do a monthly, a couple of quid a month, or a one-off donation, we'd be incredibly grateful. All right, now let's get back to the podcast.
And I mean, you've ministered to hundreds and thousands and into thousands of people over the years. Just give us, those wonderful stories of well, they're all the more wonderful because of the grimness of. Well, I mean, I've looked on the website and you got Bola, who says it just felt like coming home. Alan said, I wanted to die. Dushi, Tom, this place brought me back to life. I'd be dead if it wasn't for here. So you've got lots of those stories. So give me the ones that sort of blow you away the most, because you knew the person before and now after.
Well, the first person was very precious. Obviously, they all are. We'd been going for about a year, and we were helping people practically. It was amazing. It was exciting. But I was like, Lord, I want to see transformation. Like, of course, I want to see practical transformation, but I want to see your power. I want to see you move in a powerful way. And so I just said one morning, Lord, I need to know that this is you. I mean, I knew it was, but and the amount of times I've said that to God, Lord, I need to know that this is you. And I said, this morning, Lord, as we open our doors, I want someone to literally say to me, how do I find Jesus? I need that, Lord. I need to know that you're with us. And there've been some really, really tough stuff going on. And I think I was feeling a little bit low. Anyway, so opened the doors, and one of our regulars came in, and he didn't even get into the main hall to start having his breakfast. And he just said, Vic, can I have a word? And I was like, yeah. He said, what is this? What is this about Jesus? Like, can you tell me what Jesus is all about? So I then got really excited and said, oh my gosh, I've just prayed. I have just prayed. I was feeling a bit low, and I've just prayed that someone would come in and say those words. I said, this is remarkable. And so then we had the amazing conversation, and it was a long journey for him because his addiction had got a hold of him so powerfully that it wasn't just destroying him, but it was destroying everyone around him. And the reality that he could be forgiven for all that he'd done took absolute months for him to get hold of that. And it was very messy. And I think that's the thing that God's taught me about salvation and just his kingdom coming and his will being done. It is messy.
Yeah.
And actually, if it isn't messy, is it real? Is it going to be lasting? But there was a lot of mess going on. But I remember when God just transformed his life. He surrendered his life to Jesus, and, he was alcohol free. He got a job as a mechanic. He was able to buy a car. I mean, this is the guy that used to sleep rough often, and now he's in a job that he was loving. He was driving a car. He ended up driving the minibus that would take lots of guys from Oasis to a local church, and he just absolutely loved it.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So, but there's so many. I'll try. My quickness isn't. I don't want to. These are powerful stories, but I just want to encourage people that are listening. So the reason I'm going quick is just that I want to get a few out, but I want to honor them as well. But there was one lady that she came in a wheelchair, very, very bitter. One of her boys had been stabbed to death in a gang-related incident. Another one of her sons, who was a joyrider, he was knocked over in a hit and run and died. And her other son was in prison. So she came into Oasis really angry, really, really angry. And it was many months of just listening to her go through how bitter she was. And it reminded me of the vision God had given me. And so there was such confidence when I spoke to her about how God could turn that around, but I had to be very, very careful how I communicated with her because of the tragic loss that she'd suffered. Anyway, she did about 9 alphas. And on the last alpha, on the away day, she said from the tip of her head right down to the soles of her feet, she felt God draining the bitterness and the unforgiveness out of her body.
Wonderful.
And I remember her saying, I forgive the men that killed my boys. Then we saw the bitterness leave her over a period of days, weeks. And I remember when she just got out of her wheelchair, and she was like, wow, I don't think I need this wheelchair anymore. Was this bitterness causing the pain in my legs? And so I obviously can't tell a quick story, can I? But that was quite amazing. And a lady who came to us homeless, she came into the centre one day. Her hair was full of lice. She was in an absolute state. And I love it when someone comes in and just the Holy Spirit is like, right, Vic, I want you to give that person your entire day. So I sat with her, we were talking, and after a while, she told me about her 5 children that had been adopted. And she just started crying, saying, I've missed it. I've missed my opportunity. And I'm like, well, what opportunity? She said, well, there's a letterbox. There's a thing called a letterbox that you can write to your children once a year, but you have to do it within the first 2 years of them being adopted, or it just stops and you get no more contact. And she said, I've missed it by a couple of months, but it's because I've been on the streets. And anyway, just through God's grace, we were able to reverse that and get letterbox support. Then we just started praying every time she'd come in. I said, your main need is you need a home. Let's start praying. Let's start asking Jesus to get you a home. And the miraculous way that she got a home, and she knew, she said, in fact, she told everybody, Jesus has got me. She even told the council, Jesus got me this house. And her mental health she was in such a dark place. And I just slowly saw God minister to her. And it was messy. She would start to really realize that God had a different life for her, and then she'd fall back into some really hard situations and back and forth. But that taught me about, it's a lifetime of friendship and support and care for so many people. If you've had 20 years in addiction or abuse, you're not going to walk out of that. God does do miracles, and I've seen it. But actually, most people that we journey with, it takes years. But it's beautiful, and it's hard. Another lady who had real learning difficulties, really struggled to make herself understood. She was very, very isolated. She had her children taken off of her, just really, really struggling in life. And one time, one of the projects that we do at the centre is to help people aware of what's happening around the world. A lot of people that have come into the centre think the whole world's on benefits. They're not understanding that we are in a very privileged position in the UK. So we did a project on India and just how they struggled for water, for clean water. And then we had a group of people, about 10, who were like, oh my gosh, we've got to get involved. What we've noticed is when you really get involved in someone's life that's struggling, and you're there day in, day out, and they start to see massive change in their lives, it's a culture that they start to get hold of. It's kingdom culture, and they want to see lives transformed. So this group of about 10 people, some with severe mental health problems, addiction, also people on the streets. They just said, basically they were forming a committee and said, how can we help these people in India? And so I was like, well, I wasn't thinking it was going to go that far, but yeah, let's do something. And so I got in contact with a Christian organization in India who got water wells happening in communities that didn't have water. And it was £1,000 for a water well. So all these people, they just started raising funds for this water well. They got to £800. And then I got in contact with this charity and said, look, we've got £800 for you. But can I tell you about the stories of the lives of the people that have raised the money? So this guy the CEO of this charity was so moved by this, that he said, next time I come to England, I want to come to Gorton and I want to actually receive that check. Don't send it to us. I want them to hand that check. Now, this is a multi-million-pound charity that he's coming anyway. This lady was so moved by the way that God wants us to live. That's how she found Jesus. And it was incredible because she said for years and years, she said, I know that something has been stopping me as I've been seeing you work in this community. Something's been stopping me from committing my life, and almost telling me, if you commit your life, I'll kill you. But she said, I don't care if I'm killed. I have to, I need Jesus. And obviously, she recognized after giving her life to Jesus that was just the enemy, just trying to stop her from living a life that was complete, that was full, instead of living a life that was just so empty and painful. And that's something that when God gave me the vision for Oasis, he made it really clear. And it really startled me, actually. I felt God say, there can be no ulterior motive to your unconditional love. And I say this in fact, I don't usually say this in a situation where loads of people hear this, because they might take it wrongly, but not even salvation being your motive. Because if you only work with people that are interested, and they think, they want to join your church, or they're interested in Alpha Course or whatever, and there's other people that I couldn't give a monkey's. He said, unconditional love, no favorites. And then he said to me, Vic, while you were reveling in your sin, Jesus died for you. And it was unconditional, whether I chose Jesus or not. And And I think something that God has shown me, that his love, it's so unconditional. He's done it all for us. He did it whether we would choose him or not.
Yeah.
And actually what we've found over the years is the more unconditional that we are with our love, and we pray with people every day. We're just natural and organic in the way that we love our community, but they know that it's not about bums on seats. It's not about numbers. It's not about, no, it's about a life being transformed.
Yeah.
And that's been incredible to watch, that unconditional love, how it unlocks lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Hey, listen, we probably only got time for another couple of questions, but key lessons could be from your failures. You know, when you talk about your own spiritual DNA, you've talked about the unconditional love of God. Any other sort of key lessons you'd want to share from all these years of serving that community?
Yeah, I'm putting my trust in God daily and never living off yesterday's understanding of Jesus. That today I need to be grabbing hold of his grace and his mercy and his goodness for my life, and just understanding that I can't do it without him. I can't do my own personal, I can't do my mothering without him. I can't be the wife I want to be without him. I certainly can't run a centre and see it develop and grow without him. I'm so aware as the years have gone on of my weakness. And actually, when there's been situations in my life that have caused me to be so weak, so I'm just recovering from cancer, 4 years of operations, and it's been a really tough 4 years, and I'd never want to go through that again. But what it's taught me is, oh Lord, when your sweetness in those dark times, your goodness when my brain is just mashed and confused, and he's never failed me. Just learning to live with him and glean all that I should from every day. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Oh, there's so much more that I'd like to discuss and unpack, but time is running out. Last one, you know, you're now in this brand new purpose-built centre fulfilling the vision of Oasis. You know, that's a story in itself, isn't it? How did that happen?
Yeah, from day one, I knew that this building that I drew on this piece of paper, I always knew that we would have our own centre one day, that we were in the church, but I knew that God said there would be many people that wouldn't walk into church. There needed to be a neutral place where they could find that unconditional love. So we outgrew the first building and then outgrew the second building. And so opposite where I live, there was this big patch of land with an old derelict building on it. And I used to say to God, like, oh Lord, I love that land, and I would love Oasis to be in that building. And one of the times that I was just praying over it, I just felt God say, it's yours and you're going to have it for £1. And so I was just thinking, what? Anyway, so I told everybody that. The thing is, I never keep anything to myself. So the minute I feel anything, I blurt it out. And it took 20 years before that promise from God was realized. It was a remarkable way that how God did it. In every way, he did it in a way that I didn't want him to do it, but it built character. It meant that more people were aware of the Oasis story and God's love for the most struggling in our communities. And I'll just tell you, there's so much to say that it's just been, I am writing a book at the moment because it's just been so incredible, the amount that God has done. And especially in the journey of getting that building. But one little taster was, I'm kind of like saying, I'm walking around Gorton saying, where is this building? And at this point, I'm thinking it can't be the one that he said. So I'm just walking around and I just felt God say, I want you to pray for a Christian planner and a Christian surveyor. So I didn't even know what a planner or a surveyor were. Anyway, so I go home and I start writing a funding bid. That was the main thing I used to be doing. And then I just felt God say, I want you to go and go to the message, and I want you to go to their prayer room and just pray for them. And I was like, Lord, I'm in the middle of doing a funding bid. I haven't got time. And I just felt the Holy Spirit say, stop thinking about Oasis all the time. And there's loads more that I'm doing, even just in Manchester. So anyway, I get up and I go to the message and I go into their cafe just to ask where their prayer room is. And this lady just goes, oh, you spoke at my church a couple of weeks ago. I'm just sitting with my friend telling her about your story. And I was like, oh, wow. She goes, oh, come and join us for a coffee. So I said, oh, okay. And then we were just chatting. And then one of them just said, is there anything we can do? Let's pray. Is there anything we can pray for you? And I said, well, funnily enough, yesterday I felt God say, I need to pray for a Christian planner and a Christian surveyor. I said, I don't even know what they are. And as I was laughing, one of them said, I'm a planner. And the other one said, my husband owns a surveying company. And,
Really?
and I was like, oh my gosh. And that was the beginning of unlocking the land that we got. And there's far too much. And as you can see, I find it quite easy to tell stories. So if I go into another story, but it was just one story after another where God just did the most incredible things and helped us raise 1.2 million pounds. And as I said earlier, I'm not academic. I didn't do very well on my degree. I've got no skill set. And God brought in the most amazing people to bring that about. And also not just a 1.2 million pound building for us to do the amazing work of Oasis in, but we also were given a 1.6 acres of land right next to the building God said he was going to give us. And we're able to be part of building 26 new houses in our area that is so in need of housing. So it was just remarkable.
Oh, Victoria, well, we look forward to the book. In the meantime, where can people keep up to date with what's going on your end?
So you can go onto our website, oasisgorton.org, or you can contact me on victoria.armstrong@oasisgorton.org. And just one more thing to say, what I mainly do now is my passion is to support other churches around the UK, open their doors and serve their communities holistically. So I'm working with about 20 communities around the UK and basically saying, if what I've said today stirs your heart for reaching out to your local community, then get in touch and we'd love to serve and support you.
Fabulous. Oh, well, keep it up. We're cheering you on. I hope other people might be getting in touch with you and seeing how they can be involved. Listen, folks, if you've been inspired, I'd love you to give us a great review on Spotify or iTunes. You can be in touch with me through simongilbert.com or any of the other social media platforms. I want to say a massive thank you to Victoria.
Wonderful. Thank you for having me.
Brilliant. And next week, we'll have another superb guest. So join us again. Gossip the podcast. In the meantime, have a great week and toodaloo.